I thought we would settle into the conversation tonight. You have moose socks on. Mine are...
They're Paul Wells socks.
They're very demure. Is Doug Ford's election in Ontario a signal? Are there lessons that you should learn from that election?
There are political parties out there that do a pretty good job of stoking up those fears and exaggerating the anxieties and looking for clever wedges. I've always tried not to do that. I think we've focused on bringing people together and putting forward thoughtful solutions that hopefully will allay those fears instead of exaggerating them. But we know that strain of politics is out there, and as Doug Ford showed, it can be very effective.
There's a constant danger in Western democracies, which is that if everyone doesn't feel like the system is delivering for them, they will reject the system. We saw...
I'm not sure I agree with that. I think that's a challenge out there, but I can give you plenty of examples, particularly here in Canada, where people aren't voting on, what is the very best for me, and instead, what is going to benefit my community, what is going to benefit my region, what is going to benefit my whole country. I think if you treat voters like all that's in it for them is who's going to come out with a better outcome, who's going to buy them off better in the election, then they will respond to that. But if you make a compelling case for the direction we're going in and how we can be better if we all succeed together, then they will rise to that. But it really depends on how you choose to speak to your voters and how you choose to treat them like intelligent, thoughtful, value-driven citizens instead of just short-term consumers of whatever it is a political party is selling.
I wanted to talk about your relationship with President Trump and the one file there was no way I could avoid talking about tonight, which is NAFTA. Do you have any sense of an end to this story approaching? I mean, you've been careful not to accept as written in stone almost any deadline that others have sought to impose on this process. Does that mean it's just never going to end? I'm going to retire on this thing?
No, I certainly hope not. I think people are every time we get momentum, every time we work together, we do knock off a few more things and move closer to an eventual decision point. We're not there yet. There were points in the spring where we thought we were perhaps days or weeks away. It turned out not to be the case. We might be days or weeks away now. It might not be. This is really something that we're engaged in a, as I've said, in a thoughtful and positive way. If there's a good deal to be had for Canada, which I think there is, then we will look to sign it. If it's not the right deal for Canada, we won't sign it. I think that's what I've heard from Canadians as being fairly basic in their expectations of me.
It's got to be a frustrating process from a communications point of view because it's swallowing up large parts of your day and most of your foreign minister's job, and yet there's very limited amounts of it that you could communicate to us. Because all sides have sworn not to communicate or to negotiate in public.
Yeah, but it's a really big and really important thing. So I don't feel that just because we can't go and shout it from the rooftops every day, I don't feel that we're not doing really big things and important things. I mean, there's a sense that this job, and I know this may come as a shock to some of the journalists, but it is defined by what we actually do, not what people say about what we do.
Okay, I dispute that. I mean, we've seen troubling trends in Poland, in Hungary, in Italy, to a lesser extent, in Turkey, countries that to some extent we thought we could depend on for many years, and now things are going a little sideways. How come?
I think it's a reflection of one of the great challenges in our Western developed economies, but actually quite around the world, is that after the boom years of the past 70 years or so, the middle class in our countries, however you choose to define it or call it, doesn't feel like it is being well supported as the world is changing around them, whether it's climate change, whether it's new technologies, AI, automation, whether it's new arrivals, whether it's offshoring of jobs. There's a lot of sources of anxiety, and I think there are many political parties and actors who have realized that there is a path to short-term gain by exacerbating those differences, by playing up those fears, by looking to point fingers and lay blame. And that is catching. Fear is contagious, and we're seeing that success erode some of the public trust in institutions, which then creates a cycle of those institutions becoming less trustworthy.
I'm not going to bug you about the notwithstanding clause. You'll get enough of that over the next few months. But it sometimes seems that some of the newcomers to politics, the Trumps and the Doug Fords, can do anything, can make any grand gesture, can move quickly. And the more traditional brokerage parties, like the one that you lead, seem constrained and hemmed in and tentative and incremental. Is it frustrating to watch these guys pull their grand gestures while you're still consulting?
It really depends what you want out of politics. I think it's easy to pull off grand gestures if you're just thinking about today and maybe tomorrow's headlines. It's harder to do things that reach the two goals that I certainly put at the center of what our party's trying to do, which is one, make things better for Canadians in a real and durable, long-term way with positive impacts right away. And two, reaffirm people's faith in governments and institutions as being able to serve them and able to actually do good things for them. When you're not too worried about constitutional niceties or institutions like courts or what have you, you can take a mandate and make those grand gestures and satisfy your base in a very loud way. Does that contribute to the long-term well-being of citizens? Perhaps there's certainly a case that a smaller municipal council might do that. I've seen arguments on both sides, and I won't weigh in. But are you also eroding trust in institutions by calling into question the judiciary, by choosing to override people's fundamental rights on such a process question? There's an argument, and certainly I believe, that it is better to get things right, even if it's a little more complicated, even if it takes a little longer, and ultimately I believe that Canadians appreciate that.
It's interesting because in 2015, you ran as the agent of change, and all the old guys in the other parties were saying, hey, he can't do that. Wait a minute. And now you're sounding a little bit more like the dad who was saying, I will pull this car over right now if you guys don't smarten up. Have you aged that quickly in office?
I'm actually stunned that you're saying that, because the things that we have done to actually shift the economic trajectory that this country has been on have been significant. I mean, we put forward the Canada Child Benefit. We had folks, including folks in the bowels of finance saying, you know what, that's not going to work. You can't do that. You can't do this. And we said, no, a means-tested child benefit, a family benefit, will absolutely grow the economy. And people were saying, $22 billion is a lot of money, but on the scale of the entire Canadian economy, not much. And what we're actually seeing is more money in the pockets of the middle class, and people working hard to join it, is actually leading to more consumer confidence, better outcomes, and economic growth, the numbers which you can't refute.
Okay. Let's move on to another hot file.
So real change is real.
I'm told better is always possible.
Absolutely, and it will. It will be. Most people get that this is a complex balancing act we're trying to put forward, not an easy one. It's much easier to sit on one side or the other. But I think people get that the best interest of this country is to find ways to balance competing interests and both protect our environment and grow the economy together.
Sometimes it seems like those encamped opponents of middle ground solution don't have to be in a numerical majority to win.
Well, you don't see people coming out with signs saying, make a smart compromise, find the middle ground, find the middle ground. The people will automatically mobilize around a polarized position or other. And one of the challenges of politics is, yes, listening to those concerns, because sometimes often there are founded elements in there that you do have to take into account. But for the most part, people just know that politics is tough. I mean, I remember speaking with a woman who said, "Oh, I'm really disappointed that you're moving forward with the Keystone XL, with the TMX pipeline. But I still support you on a whole bunch of other things. I just wish you weren't doing that. But I understand that you feel you need to do it, and I'll still vote for you." I mean, you don't want to get or you'd love to, but you don't often get 100% support for everything you do. People support you or not on a broad range of things, and not even have you been perfect on everything. Are you trying to do the right things, doing a credible job of it, and are you keeping your values at the center of the decisions you're making? And on that score, I think we're doing pretty well.